well, I suppose another genre, not so much the folk music, but maybe we have a lot of what we call rebel songs in Ireland, and you know, we've had a long history of occupation in this country, and a lot of ways of people coping and dealing with that were through song and to explain as to what happened. And again, I feel that through song and story is how you can really get a feeling of how people felt and the emotions, and you know, the people that a lot of people died, and you know, all those people that died over the years were brothers, sisters, fathers, sons, probably mostly men, but you know, they were all very important to their own families. So some of the songs and the stories, that's what I love about the old Irish songs, is there's a story. You know, it's no surprise that the song Grace has become so popular in the last number of years. But I always loved the song Grace. It was always one of my favourite songs. In fact, I played it at my wedding, although when I think about it now, it was probably quite a, you know, paradoxical kind of thing to play at your wedding, but it was modified to fit the occasion. But I just always loved that particular song, and it is it's very popular now. I suppose I really like the way some of the rebel songs are played full blast in a pub setting. People are bouncing around. I think that's completely wrong, because we are really thinking about tragedy, an awful lot of tragedy that's come through. You know, some of those songs are very poignant, and they do tell a story of what happened in our history. I think they're utilised wrongly. These songs are beautiful, and if they're sang properly with the proper accompaniment, they're actually phenomenal. I think far be it from me to say what anybody can do, but to me, to give them their proper place is, you know, years ago we might have got a man just starting to sing or a sing-song in a pub, you know, at a fla, or you know, at a traditional music session. Someone possibly would have sang the song and there would have been absolute silence for this song, you know, and that's the reverence I think those songs should be held in, because of what they actually stand for. Now, what really gets on my goat is when they are used and sang in the stadium of a particular football stadium. You know, I don't think that's appropriate, because again, as I say, we're talking about major tragedies. They're sung out there, they're used, and people are bouncing around to them, and I just don't think it's right. And I think that's where they're being then used as, and the censorships around them. I think if they were kept in their settings, you know, like played in, for their artistic value and for the actual storytelling that's in them, because you know, it is history, it's part of history, there's no denying it. Like, you know, everybody has their own songs of history. I just think that they need to be respected for what they are, and not set to disco music and, you know, played to be bounced around. I mean, maybe that's my age, but I do think there should be some reverence around them.
The next song is actually going to be another Van Morrison song, called Sweet Thing. I could have picked about 40 Van Morrison songs. I just went with Sweet Thing because it is I've just been on a bit of a kick with the song overall recently. He was extremely young and he was living out in Boston on his own. He was like 20, 21, and he had just been ripped off by the mob, even though he had just hit big with Brown Eyed Girl, a worldwide hit, and yet he got none of the money out of it. So he was scratching around Boston, running from the mob. Nothing to his name. Was, you know, everywhere he walked around the street, they were playing his song that he wasn't getting any money for. So it must have been fucking driving him mental. So he sort of shacked himself up with his girlfriend at the time and just started writing songs and pretty much recording them on the spot. You know, getting rid of the formality of it and just getting what was in his head out off the page and onto the record. And one of them, well, the whole record was the whole record ended up, of course, being Astral Weeks. It starts off with such a disarmingly simple, just strumming electric guitar. There doesn't seem to be any specific rhythm to it. I don't even know if he's attempting to keep time. But just the way it sort of flows, and then very organically, almost like out of the air, out of thin air, just the flute and this cello and all just sort of meld their way in without even realizing they've started, and then they're already in the tune. And then he starts the lyrics, and the lyrics, filled full of just Belfast dialect, really. Instead of saying 4, he would say 4-2. I would put my head in the water for to wet my head. He didn't care about trying to present himself as a pop star, or trying to go to anyone else's beat. Van Morrison was very much his own person, and he basically just put what he was out there, and if you liked it, brilliant. If you didn't, who cares? And he has become arguably the most revered Irish musician in the United States. And yet over here he's considered, the first thing people say is, oh, he's curmudgeonly, oh, he's a grumpy. So what if the man's grumpy, like, do you know what I mean? If one of our greatest national heroes is, the worst thing you can say about him is he's a bit grumpy, I think we're all right. Do you know what I mean? Hozier, who's getting mentioned quite a lot in these lists, Hozier did quite a good version, but again, I'll go back to the original just because it is an extremely difficult song to cover, because, as I said, the structure of it is so loose that it's hard to actually imprint yourself onto it if you're trying to sing it yourself. So when Van Morrison just captured whatever it was he captured in the air that day, I think that's the one that sort of stands the test of time.
The next song would be Shanna Golden. And Shanna Golden is a little town in County Limerick, small town. And the song Shanna Golden was written by a guy from Kerry called Sean McCarthy. It's only about 50 years or so old, it's not very old. But I love the song, but it brings back memories. Again, it brings back memories, and this is why I picked it. The first time I heard it was a little pub in Main Street, Fintona. It was known as the Poets Pub. It was named the Poets Pub because the mother of a famous Fintona writer, John Montague, lived there. They had a traditional session. Men would gather in and play every Friday and Saturday night, and if you were there, you were asked to sing, you sang, and you couldn't sing it, I don't think it made much difference. But it was just a lovely, like, cottagey, homely feeling in it. And on one night I went down to it, and there was a gentleman singing with great passion, a local man, Packy Cunningham, and he sang Shanna Golden. And when I listened to it, I think the hairs were sort of standing in the back of my neck. It was just listening to the man singing it, and just the way he sang it was just lovely. And it was a love song. It's a song of a young couple. They meet and they get married before they're 21 and look forward to a happy long life together. And unfortunately, that was short-lived. The War of Independence was going on, and the boy Willie decided that he would help out and fight for his country or whatever. The upshot was that he was killed and died in the arms of his young bride. And the whole story is just quite haunting. The War of Independence came and gone, the hills went back to peace again, and Willie is lying in a grave in Shanna Golden. And I just thought there was something, at the time I was about the same age as the girl in the song, and myself and my husband were in the same age group, and I just always felt that was such an evocative song. There was something really nice about it, and I've always loved it since then. I was watching TG Cahir one night, and they were doing a programme about towns in the south of Ireland, and they ended off with this couple called Yvonne Daly and Mick Flanagan, and they were reenacting the part of Willie and his wife and telling each other the story. But it was absolutely, again, there was a haunting feeling about it, but it was just the way, to me it was, I listened to it then. It's not a song you hear very often. You do hear some singers singing, but it's like country and westernised, if you could say that. But the way that pair sang the song was with true feeling, and it was like bringing me back to all those years ago when I heard it first. Willie is the story of many as a young man, and the futility of war.
My number 3 song is Gillamar. It's an Irish song, and roughly translated it means my darling hero, and it's a lament, if you like, but not necessarily unrequited love, but it's a lament of a lady feeling the loss of her Gillamar, her hero. And in the song, there's an older version of the song apparently that dates back to the Jacobite Wars in Ireland in the 1600s, and I think the original version is Ireland is personified as a lady and then lamenting her hero. But the more recent version has been modernised and taken on by the late Sean Riada around the 1970s, I suppose. He actually died in 1971. He was only a young man. He was barely 40, I think. But he started an Irish language choir, and this was one of their songs. And he died in 71. The song wasn't actually released in a modern form until 1972, a year after his death, I think by his son Pater, who kept the choir going, and of course is very steeply into music as his father was. I go to an Irish language class. I love the Irish language. It's Bralum Hangahain. So that was one of the songs we learned in our choir, and I loved it. Loved the air of it, and it's Sean O'Reilly's version that we do. Basically, it's about a woman or a lady lamenting the death of Bonnie Prince Charles. But it's just about, again, lamenting a lost love. I love it. It's sang sometimes at funerals, and famously it was sang at the funeral of Martin McGuinness, the late Martin McGuinness, and it was Pater O'Reilly's Irish choir from Kerry from Cork came up and sang it. They sang Irish songs all through the Mass, and at the final part of the Requiem Mass, as Martin's body was leaving the church, they sang it. It rang out all over there. It was actually one of those emotional, poignant moments in time, and associated a lot with that. But I love the song, and they did. It was at a funeral of a local man, Paddy Joe McLean, and they had a lovely wee female choir. Now the Cork choir is a male choir, which is beautiful. This was a group of young girls, and they sang it at Paddy Joe's funeral, so that's actually where I heard it recently.